We're all looking for it, aren't we? That real feeling of happiness, something that actually lasts.
It seems to be hardwired into us, this constant search. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from.
Absolutely. So today on the deep dive, we're going to, well, really unpack that. Why are we always searching? What stops us? What's life fundamentally about?
And we're drawing on some pretty deep wisdom for this. The source is the first session from a series by the International Society of Krishna Consciousness.
Right. It's a systematic presentation of Vedic wisdom. And this first part is titled In Search of Happiness, looking at permanent versus temporary happiness.
It tackles some big questions right away, questions I think, we all grapple with at some point.
Exactly. Like, why this relentless search? What are the real roadblocks? Are the problems we face just random? Or is there something deeper?
And crucially, can we actually find happiness that, you know, doesn't just vanish? Unconditional happiness, is that even a thing?
Our source material kicks things off with a really interesting distinction, drawing from the Mahabharata. It contrasts humans and animals.
Yes, and this is fundamental to their whole approach. The idea is that while we share basic drives,
Eating, sleeping,
yeah,
self-defense, mating.
right, ahara, nidra, bhaya, mithunam, as the text puts it. While we share those, humans have something extra, a unique capacity.
The ability to ask spiritual questions, to inquire about more than just survival.
Exactly, to explore our connection to, well, something beyond the purely material. And here's where it gets quite pointed.
The concept of Kripana.
Yeah. The text suggests that if we don't use this unique human ability, if we don't engage in that spiritual inquiry, we're like a miser.
A miser, how so?
Like someone hoarding wealth but never using it. We have this incredible potential, this human form of life meant for deeper understanding. But if we just focus on the basics,
We're essentially wasting it,
yeah,
like being spiritually stingy.
that's a good way to put it. It raises the question of what our intelligence is actually for. The source says it's for discrimination.
Discriminating between what? Good and bad.
Yes, and crucially, between the temporary and the permanent. Between fleeting freedom and real freedom. What's the ultimate purpose of this human brain power?
So that sets the stage nicely for tackling this core issue. The hunt for pleasure versus maybe true happiness. Those four basic drives we mentioned.
Ahara, nidra, paya, mithunam, eating, sleeping, defending, mating.
Does human life have any goal beyond just doing those things really well or, finding new ways to do them?
That's the challenge posed. If it's just about that, how different are we really? It loops back to that unique capacity mentioned in the Mahabharata.
For spiritual inquiry, for seeking a relationship with something higher.
Precisely. And failing to do that is where the Kripana idea comes back in. It's presented as neglecting our most valuable asset.
Not just missing out, but actively choosing not to use our intelligence to examine, the bigger picture, our beliefs.
Right. It's a call to apply that discernment to the most fundamental questions of existence. And that leads into 7 key questions the source says the Bhagavad Gita tackles.
Okay, let's hear them. These sound like they get right to the core.
First, why am I always looking for happiness? A simple question, but profound.
Yeah, seems obvious, but why the constant search? Then what?
What is stopping me from being happy? Why do problems keep coming to me? What are the real problems of life?
Okay, real problems.
Yeah.
That implies some are less real, or maybe superficial.
Perhaps. Then it asks, how do I solve these real problems? Is there a process to solve them permanently?
Permanently, that's the key word again.
And finally, the ultimate aim. Can I achieve uninterrupted and unconditional happiness?
Wow. Those cover a lot of ground. They really probe that deep dissatisfaction we often feel.
They do. And the source introduces 4 concepts from the Gita to frame the answers. Kala time, Prakriti material nature,
Go ahead.
Jiva, the individual soul, and Ishwara God, or the supreme controller. These are presented as the key elements in this whole dynamic.
Got it. So we're searching for happiness, we face obstacles, and maybe we're not even focused on the real problems. Let's dig into that. What are these real problems according to the source?
Well, there are specific criteria given. A real problem has to affect everyone. No exception.
Okay, universal impact.
Second, nobody actually wants it.
Makes sense.
And third, nobody can ultimately avoid it no matter how hard they try.
Affects everyone. Unwanted, unavoidable. So what fits that description? Daily frustrations usually don't.
According to the Bhagavad Gita, as presented here, the 4 are birth, janma, death, hermiyu, old age, jara, and disease, vyadi.
Birth, death, old age, disease. We tend to see those as just life, the natural course of things.
But this perspective frames them as dukkha suffering, or fundamental problems inherent in just being in this material world. It challenges us to question why we accept them.
I see. So birth isn't just a beginning, it's the start of entanglement and suffering.
In this view, yes. And death is the undeniable endpoint for this body. Old age brings inevitable decline. Disease, well, that can hit anyone, anytime.
They definitely fit the criteria. Universal, unwanted, unavoidable.
These aren't just random misfortunes. They're seen as woven into material existence itself.
Okay, so how do we approach understanding and dealing with these? The source talks about different levels of intelligence, right? Based on how we learn.
Yes, it suggests a hierarchy. The most intelligent learns simply by hearing and understanding the truth.
Just hearing it is enough.
For the highest level, yes. Then there are those who need to see it to believe it.
More common, probably.
Then those who have to go through it themselves to personally experience the suffering to learn the lesson.
Reading the hard way.
And supposedly the least effective. Those who suffer, forget why, and just repeat the same mistakes.
Ouch. That sounds familiar sometimes. The idea is that seeking understanding is better than just reacting.
Exactly. Proactive learning over reactive suffering, essentially. And this is contrasted sharply with a different philosophy mentioned.
Karvaka Muni.
Right. Presented as a purely atheistic, materialistic viewpoint, all about sense gratification.
And the quote they use is pretty blunt. Just beg, borrow, or steal. You must eat butter, live happily, eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy.
It's stark, isn't it? It represents that extreme focus only on immediate sensory pleasure as the goal of life.
And the source connects to this to some modern ideas, too. Not necessarily that extreme, but similar in focus.
It suggests that many modern philosophies or even self-help approaches ultimately emphasize personal enjoyment, maybe self-improvement for material gain, but without a deeper ultimate purpose.
Like that example of the new Baba in Gachibowli and his GL yoga, life is just a circle. Enjoy the ride, no ultimate destination.
Exactly. It highlights that contrast between a purely materialistic view and the Vedic perspective seeking something permanent.
But regardless of philosophy, the source brings up that universal endpoint again.
Death. Doesn't matter what you believe. The physical body has an expiry date. It becomes, as the text rather graphically puts it, stool, ash, or earth.
A sobering reminder of the temporary nature of the physical.
Which leads back to suffering and its different forms. The source introduces the concept of the threefold miseries, tapatrayan mulanam.
Okay, let's break those down. What's the first one?
Adhyatmika. Miseries arising from our own body and mind.
So internal stuff, like
Yeah.
physical pain, illness, but also mental anguish, stress, anxiety, relationship issues, feeling misunderstood.
Precisely. And the source even cites statistics about mental health struggles, suggesting this is a widespread issue. Our own minds can be a major source of suffering.
Okay, Ashatmika, what's next?
Adhibatika. Miseries caused by other living entities.
So problems caused by people or animals, insects, things like conflict, competition, societal pressures, work stress, even just annoying advice.
You got it. Any suffering inflicted by others. We all experience that too, right?
Definitely. And the third?
Adibhaivika. Miseries caused by higher powers or material nature, forces beyond our control.
Like natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, extreme weather, accidents, things we can't really prevent.
Exactly, external forces. The point is, everyone, regardless of who they are or what they believe, experiences these three kinds of miseries to some degree.
Nobody gets a free pass.
Seems not. So the natural question is, how do we deal with them? And we tend to look toward...
Science, technology,
Yeah.
modern solutions.
That's the common tendency, yeah. But the source then introduces a different angle from this Srimad Bhagavatam.
What does it say?
It basically argues that real deep knowledge transcends religious activities done just for material benefit. It points to a higher truth that can actually uproot these threefold miseries.
Uproot them, not just manage them.
That's the claim. It says this truth is understandable by those with a pure heart, and that the Bhagavatam itself is sufficient for realizing it. It even asks, what is the need of any other scripture?
That's a bold claim. It directly challenges the idea that just improving our material situation is the answer.
It does. It sets up a contrast. The Vedic ideal might be a poor person who is content versus the modern reality where even a very wealthy person can be deeply unsatisfied.
And it questions our idea of progress, like, are more hospitals and pharmacies really a sign of well-being if the underlying unhappiness isn't addressed?
It's a provocative thought. Are we treating symptoms rather than the root cause? Which brings us to the nature of the happiness we do experience materially.
Through the senses, you mean? Sight, sound, taste, touch, smell.
Exactly. The source explains that this kind of happiness, sense gratification, is inherently temporary. It's like, well, the analogy used is chewing gum.
Chewing gum, how so?
The initial burst of flavor is nice, right?
Mhm.
But it fades quickly. You keep chewing, but the pleasure diminishes, and eventually it's just gone. Sense pleasure is like that. Fleeting, ultimately disappointing.
That makes sense. The novelty wears off, the excitement fades.
And not only is it temporary, the source warns it can actually be dangerous if we're controlled by our senses. It gives some quite vivid examples.
Oh, like what?
Like a moth drawn irresistibly to a flame, ending in destruction, that's being trapped by sight.
Okay.
Or a deer captivated by a hunter's flute, becoming easy prey, trapped by sound. A musk deer, lured by its own powerful scent, getting caught, trapped by smell. An elephant, enticed by the touch of a female elephant, falling to a pit, trapped by touch.
Wow. Those are powerful analogies. The idea is that unchecked desire for sense pleasure can lead us into trouble, basically.
Precisely. These fleeting pleasures can become traps if they dictate our actions.
So, given all this, the temporary nature of material pleasure, the potential dangers, the existence of deeper problems, the threefold miseries, where does that leave us? What is the goal, according to this perspective?
It's not just about avoiding pain or maximizing temporary pleasure. The source concludes that the real purpose of this human life is something much bigger.
Which is
To inquire into the ultimate cause, the source of everything, to seek permanent relief from all these miseries.
not just temporary fixes, but a permanent solution.
Yes, to attain an eternal life characterized by bliss, peace, and real, lasting happiness. To find a final answer to those fundamental problems: birth, death, old age, and disease.
So, wrapping up this first part of our deep dive, we've looked at that gap between fleeting pleasure and lasting happiness, this unique human potential for asking deeper questions.
Identifying those unavoidable life challenges: birth, death, old age, disease, and realizing the limits of purely material fixes for the suffering we all experience.
It definitely gives you a framework to think differently about, well, everything.
It certainly does, and it sets up the next big question perfectly, which the source indicates is the topic for the subsequent session.
Which is,
Does God exist, or is he a creation of human mind? Prove it.
whoa, okay, that's a big one. Definitely something to ponder.
It takes this whole inquiry to the next level, questioning the very basis of reality beyond the material. What do you make of that initial question?
It's a fundamental challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Proof, existence, creation. Definitely leaves you thinking. Well, hopefully this deep dive has given all of you listening some valuable food for thought and maybe sparked some curiosity to explore further.
Thanks for joining us as we continue to unpack these profound ideas about life and the search for happiness.